Hello Wargamers, I'm Invasive Ramnus, and today I want to talk to you about potential options for defeating Imperial Knight Titans using the Tau Empire Codex. Before I get started though, I just want to say thanks for watching. If you like this video, I think you know what to do, but of course your subscriptions are greatly appreciated, and if you want to let me know what you think about defeating Imperial Knights, let me know in the comments below, whether that's just about Tau Empire or any other army. That'd be great. So, alright, let's get started. Now, before I introduce you to our cast of characters, I think we should talk about a few things about Imperial Knight Titans to begin with. For one thing, they are very large stature. They're on a big base, and they're larger than the Riptide, so they're actually about this high. So line of sight blocking terrain is not going to help you in a lot of cases, because often line of sight blocking terrain isn't quite that tall. Unless it's done right or in ample numbers. So just be aware of that. But Imperial Knights have 13, 12, 12 armor, and the more common variant, at least as far as I expect, has a 72-inch twice firing autocannon and a heavy stubber. Now the autocannon has range 72 inches and the stubber has range 36 inches, I believe. But the autocannon is a blast template, which means that it cannot fire, it cannot shoot at flyers. So that will be important later on when we're talking about this guy over here. But yeah, basically they can fire a long way, and they are super heavies, which means that penetrating rolls, pretty much anything on the penetrating damage chart is ignored except for a explodes result, and instead of exploding, it just does D3 hull points, of which the Knight Titan has 6. So at minimum, you're going to need 2 penetrating shots. So basically a pen, and then a 6, and then another 5 or a 6 to get those 3 hull points off twice. So that's the basics of it. So let's get started here. Your cast of characters are, as you see here, we have a couple different options with crisis suits. The Riptide, you know, now the staple of the Tau Empire army, brings some good things to the table here. Broadsides, your buff commander is going to help you out a lot of times, and then the often overlooked Tau flyers also bring some options. So let's get started here. Crisis suits have a couple different options. Primarily, you're going to be interested in fusion blasters and missile pods, not plasma rifles, seeing as you know, front armor is 13 and side armor is 12. Plus, it has a ion shield, which it redirects every time it's your shooting phase. Not on his shooting phase, but on your shooting phase. He chooses one of his facings, and that facing has a 4-up invulnerable save. So the trick with crisis suits is going to be getting the jump on him and cornering him in a way that you get multiple angles. So let's say my hand's a Knight Titan, you want to have a crisis suit team Deepstrike on either side of it so that you can get you know, basically as many, either way he is going to be SOL. One of these crisis suit teams is going to have a firing option that's going to ignore his 4-up invulnerable save. So with crisis suits, you're always going to want to deep strike them to get that element of surprise and really corner him and exploit the fact that he can only get that 4-up invulnerable save on one side. Additionally, deep striking is going to be helpful because he has that 72-inch range autocannon, which is going to make it really hard to sneak up on him. So that's why crisis suits are going to be great. Now, as far as the options that you have, like I said, you have missile pods or fusion blasters. Fusion blasters, if you're going to kit them out to be Titan hunters, of course, you're going to want to do 2 fusion blasters. You're not going to want to do a plasma rifle and fusion blaster like I have pictured here. But fusion blasters are going to be great for getting those pen results and giving you a chance at getting those D3 hull points off. Now the bad thing about that is you only get 1 shot with each fusion blaster, and when the Titan finally does you know, fail, he can put out a strength D template. So if your crisis suits are close enough to get Melta range, they are also close enough to get D plated in the face. So that's one potential downside of going the Fusion Blaster route. So if you want to stay a little bit farther away, think about missile pods. Missile pods are strength 7, so on side you're going to need a 5 to get a glance, and because heavies don't really care about pens for the most part, having a glance and a pen are going to be about the same. So either way, you're really going to only be taking off one hull point most of the time. And since that's the case, you want a high number of shots, which missile pods have. If you put 2 missile pods on a crisis suit, that's 4 strength 7 shots each. Now, put 3 of those in a unit and put 2 down on the table, 1 on either side of the Titan, and you are getting, let's see, 24 shots. Of course, half of those are probably going to be subject to a 4-up invulnerable save, but nonetheless, that's a fair number of shots in order to actually get a bunch of hull points off that Titan. So that's good. Those are pretty much your options for crisis suits. If I had to say which one I would choose, I would probably go with the missile pods, just because I have more shots and they also are at further range, so I'm not at risk from that D template straying off and hitting these guys as easily. Alright, next option is the Riptide. Riptide has a strength 7 ion accelerator, which is great for this. Well, actually, it's okay for this. I wouldn't say it's great. Having an AP value of 2 helps on the pen chart, so you have a higher chance of getting those explodes results to get the D3, but he only has 3 shots unless you get close enough to use Fusion Blasters, which again, you're subject to that risking that D template in the face. So especially with an expensive unit like a Riptide, or at least an all-star unit like the Riptide, you might not want to subject him to that. But he is relatively durable to all of the Titans, not non-close combat attacks, seeing as it doesn't have a strength D blast weapon that actually fires. So the Riptide can weather the volley of fire to get close enough. It's just a matter of actually taking out the Titan once it gets there. And of course, unless you have multiple Riptides, you're going to be subject to that 4-up invulnerable save because of the ion shielding from the Titan. So Riptides are probably best used in combination with other Riptides or other crisis suits. Broadsides might seem like a really good option for this, but I don't think they are. And here's why. They're putting out the same number of shots that the Titan actually cares about, strength 7 shots, as the crisis suits that we mentioned earlier. But they're pretty much stationary. You don't get that element of surprise. And since the Titan has a range of 72 inches with that autocannon, he's probably not going to wander into your broadsides range he's not going to be really excited about that. He's not going to come running at you and giving you all these shots necessarily. So the broadside, although it does put out a nice number of shots, might not be the best option for taking out Titans because it just can't really move and shoot, which mobility is really an asset when trying to take out big things like this. If Empire Strikes Back taught you nothing, or if it taught you anything, it should be that mobility really helps taking out giant walker thingies. So broadsides are an option, but probably not the best one. No matter what you're doing, you're probably going to want your buff commander to be with at least one, well, you're going to want him to be with one of your units because he's going to be offering Tank Hunter and twin linking your shots. So if you're going with crisis suits, have him ride along for the Deepstrike, and if he's going with the Riptide, have him ride along with the Riptide. Your final option are the flyers. And so one of the most interesting things about the Titans is that they cannot reliably fire at flyers. Their main weapon cannot fire because it's a blast, and their heavy stubber is strength 4, I think. It's nothing to, it's, you know, not consequential for a flyer. So flyers are really a solid option facing knights and knights alone. Now, given the option between the two flyers that Tau have, I'm going to still go with the Sunshark Bomber. The attack flyer has a lot of the same options. Granted, it has 4 heavy 4 shots, or excuse me, it has 4 ion shots at the same range instead of just 2 ion shots, but the Sunshark Bomber still has missile pods. So really, the bomber has everything that the attack fighter has in terms of fighting Titans. That the bomber has everything that the attack fighter has, plus it has the bombs, which you can use at some point in the future. Generally, Knight Titans are probably going to be bringing some sort of troop to claim objectives or something. You know, work on the sidelines while the Titans are getting all the attention. And so the bombs from the bomber can actually be pretty helpful in taking that out. And since Titans can't fire at flyers, majority of that army's value is not going to be able to even touch these guys. So this is actually a really, really good option, especially when you consider the built-in networked marker light, so you can boost the ballistic skill of your drones and your missile pods pretty well. The only downside here is for the points you're not getting a lot of shots, but they are relatively immune to Titans to begin with, so you know, you gotta kind of weigh those out. So what would my ideal Titan hunting force go? Well, what would it look like? Well, I'd take 2 Riptides because I always take 2 Riptides. Buff Commander, of course, and then I would actually prefer to use Farsight Enclaves and take a couple units of missile pod crisis suits as troops, but if you don't have that option of taking Farsight, just take 1 unit of crisis suits with 2 missile pods each. But if you are taking Farsight, take you know, 3 or 4. Go minimally on troops, but by minimally I mean, you know, for like 1500 you probably want at least 4. Broadsides, I would include them in your army in a tournament scene, just because most of the time broadsides are going to be great, but against Titans they're just not going to be that strong. So if you're going in a tournament setting, you have to keep in mind that you're going to be fighting other things besides Titans. Still bring broadsides, but if you know you're going to be going up against Titans, these guys are going to be great. And I'm actually considering bringing the flyer as well. Really, the big change to your list here is going to be less emphasis on broadsides, more emphasis on crisis suits because they can deep strike in there, and also potentially taking a flyer if you have the points. So hope you guys like this video. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and happy wargaming.